Hi viewers and welcome to the channel and welcome to another episode of the Learning FreeCAD for Beginners, where we teach the fundamentals of FreeCAD whilst we learn workflows and also show practical examples for those workflows. In this tutorial we're going to be looking at the A2Plus workbench and the subject of printing in place. So this is where we print an object that has connections but print it as one single object. So for instance, in this tutorial we're going to take this simple link, model it and attach it in the A2Plus workbench to a number of other links so they connect together through a hole and shaft. We can then simulate that in the A2Plus workbench to see the movement and then print this on a 3D printer after slicing it and produce a movable part by that rod and hole. This will be the first video that's looking at the A2Plus workbench, and then we're going to go deeper into there to understand more about the constraints and the way objects link up in A2Plus. So I hope you're enjoying these videos, and let's have a look at this workflow. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the site. I also have a Ko-Fi or a Ko-fi site that you can donate to if you so desire, and that's at ko-fi.com/MANG0. I also run a Patreon where you can subscribe and get extra content, and that's at www.patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Any money that's kindly donated will be used to expand the channel. Before we get into some modelling, let's install the workbench that we need. We're going to be installing the A2Plus workbench from the Tools Add-on Manager. From here, if we start typing A2Plus, we'll see the workbench here, which we can install if we don't have it installed already. The A2Plus differs from assembly workbenches such as Assembly 4 in that its philosophy is, as you see, keep it simple. This makes the workbench very easy to deal with because we don't have to worry about local coordinate systems or adding any extra datum objects to line up our parts. I'm just going to click on the workbench and install it. Once installed, we're going to reload FreeCAD and then we're ready to go. I'm going to start by creating a new document, and in this tutorial we're going to be using the part design. We can use the part if we want to, and what I'm going to do is create a simple link object. So this object will connect with itself to make a chain of repeating objects that we can use to print in place with the A2Plus workbench. It's up to you what we create, but this is for a demonstration purpose. So I'm going to create a body and then create a sketch. We're going to go along the XY plane and hit OK. So this is going to be a very basic object. I'm looking down on our scene and I'm going to create a slot. So just using the slot tool, I'm going to constrain to the center. You can see I've got the auto constraints on. Then we can come up and place it connected to this line. I've got some redundant constraints because I've added it to that line, and also I had a horizontal constraint there which wasn't needed, so it's made it redundant. Let's add some constraints in here. So I'm going to take these 2 points and make this 25 millimeters. Also going to add a diameter constraint to this arc. So use a diameter and set this to 15 mil. Once we've got our shape, we can close and extrude this. In part design, it's known as a pad. So make sure the sketch is selected. You can see it selected over here, and we'll pad this. I'm going to pad this by 12 millimeters and also make the pad symmetrical to plane. This means if we turn the gridding on, you'll see this will be slicing through that plane. You can see we've got the axis cross on, and that's available, if I OK that, from view, toggle axis cross, and you can see that's in the middle of that axis cross. This just makes it a bit easier when I take a section out of here to make a slot, allowing these to be linked together. Now, against best practices, I am actually going to fillet this straight away. The reason being is because I want the shape, and I know that fillet's not going to affect anything else. I'm going to click on this face and then create the fillet. And I'm going to set this fillet, pressing the up arrow on the radius. I'm going to set it so it's just on the margin of error. So at the moment 5mm. If I go one more, it goes into error, and you can see we've gone back to the normal pad. Let's bring this back down. Let's set this to something like 5.99. That's allowed that to take, and hit OK. And you can see that fillet has taken all the way around there, because filleting this face will only succeed if all the other faces going around were filleted. So we've got this lozenge type shape here. If you wanted to, we could do this with something like a primitive object, like an ellipsoid or an oval, but I'm just going to use fillets for the time being because it's easier. And we haven't touched on primitive objects in our course as of yet. Let's create a sketch. Now this sketch is going to section through here, and we'll pocket this to make space. Let's click on the top and make sure nothing's selected and create a new sketch. You can go along the XY plane. If I add some angle to this, you'll see that the plane here, the XY plane, sections through the center of here. Let's hit OK. We're now through the center of that object. Using the section view, or come up to Sketch, View Section, we'll cut this object in half. Use the navigation cube to make sure that we're around the right way, because if we start bringing this around, sometimes it becomes hard. If we say we're like this, it actually looks like the same as if this. We get this illusion. So always use your navigation cube to align yourself in 3D space. Now we've got this shape. Let's create a circle in here and pocket it. Then we can create another operation on this side that will slot into this section when we repeat a number of links in our assembly. Using the circle, make sure we auto constrain to that center point here. Got the auto constraints on. We get a coincident constraint, and we'll come out just beyond. I'm going to hit escape and click on this circle and add some dimensions. So we're going to insert a diameter and set this to 16mm and hit OK. This allows us some gapping in here to allow for the connection to move freely in this space. Let's hit close. You can see the sketch is within there. Now we can use the pocket. This will create a pocket moving downwards. Let's make sure that the symmetrical to plane is selected, and we can see that pocket in there. And you can see the curvature we have. The length is 5mm. We can go for that. We can adjust that later and hit OK. Now we've got one side done. Let's do the other side. We're going to repeat this on the other side, but this time we're going to take material off this part and this part. So we get a female and male side. Let's try that. Let's click on top, make sure nothing is selected, create a sketch. This time we're going to go along the XY plane again and hit OK. We are now positioned along that XY plane, and we can create another sketch. Use the section view. I'm going to import some geometry because we've got nothing to attach the circle to. So I need to take this geometry, import it, so I'll get a center point. To do that, I'm going to use this tool here, External Geometry, also available from Sketch, Sketch Geometries, External Geometry. If I highlight this edge here, you can see I can import it. Click on the edge, we get the center point. I can now use my circle and create a circle against that center point and bring this out. Again, we're going to set this to 16mm. Click on the circle, add a diameter, and set this to 16. Hit enter. Let's hit close. We now have that sketch in there. I'm going to take that sketch and come out to edit and duplicate selection. I'm going to uncheck the pocket, just leaving the sketch there. I'm going to uncheck the plane as well, we don't need that. And hit OK. We now got two sketches that are the same. I'm going to move one sketch up and one sketch down. I'm going to click on the first sketch we created and move this up. This will be along the attachment and the position. We'll open up the position and we're going to move it along the Z axis, and we can move that up. Now the idea is to move it so it's around about 1 millimeter away from the top here to allow for the print in place process, because we don't want those adhering to that surface. You can play with the dimensions depending on the size of the extrusion nozzle that you're using on the 3D printer or to personal preferences. So that's up 2 millimeters. Come into the other one, looking on the Z axis again, and we use a -2 millimeters there. So we've got those two. We're now going to pocket these. Take our first sketch and we use a pocket. Now this may go in the wrong direction, as you see here. Just click on reverse and we can set this to through all. That will go all the way through here, or to first. Yeah, okay. That's our first pocket done. Let's do the same with this one. So this sketch, let's pocket this using the pocket. This is going in the right way, so we can go through all or to first. Either or, it doesn't matter. Let's hit OK. And now we've got the starts of our model. I'm going to place a hole in this side. Now before we add the holes, let's get a quick overview of how this is going to join together. To do that, we're just going to mock up the assembly. So let's come into something like the draft workbench and we're going to make a clone. You can see the gridding is on and you can see how that's intersecting that plane there. Just going to make a simple clone of this, clicking on the body and using the clone. We could have done this in the part design. It doesn't matter, but one other thing we can do, rather clicking on the body, we can click on the last action and clone that. So come up to modifications and clone. This creates a simple clone of that pocket. And you can see a clone there, which I can right click and transform. And I can move this over and get an idea of how this is going to look. So we can see how that fits in there. Let's hit OK and add some transparency to the clone by clicking on that clone pocket, coming down to the view, moving down to the transparency and raising the transparency up to something like 80. This allows us to see inside. So you can see how that's inside there. You can see we've got clearance, and if I transform that a bit more, right click, transform, we can get an idea of where this has to be to allow for the hole. So we can see that sitting in there. And we just get an idea of what it's going to look like and how they're going to connect together. Let's now create the hole. I'm going to keep the clone. I'm going to hit OK. And before I exit the draft workbench, I'm just going to turn the gridding off by this tool down here. Let's go back to the part design. Now we're back in the part design. And I can hide this clone and come in and create a sketch upon here. Let's click on this face and create a new sketch. We've attached the sketch to here. Now we've got to pull in some geometry because I want the center point. So let's try pulling in geometry from here. You can see we've pulled in a B-spline. This is no good to us because it doesn't have the center point. To remove that, let's come over to the tasks and scroll down to find that B-spline under the elements. You can see we've got purple dots. This means it's an external reference. And we can see that by dropping down the drop down here to external, and that doesn't change. So construction, external, or all, you can see this one is external. Let's come over, hit escape to get the mouse pointer back, or hit the right mouse button and highlight that edge and hit the delete key. Let's remove that now. Now, one way to find that center in there from the geometry we've already placed in is to use the original sketch. So come over to the model and find that last action, which is this pocket here, and come in and find this sketch and press the space bar. We can see we got one of the circles that's built this feature, and we can use the import geometry against that circle. Let's do that and bring that in. We've brought in that circle. We could have also used this circle here. Let's brought that in there as well. So we've got a choice. I've got this edge or one of the circle sketches. We don't need both, so I'm going to go for this edge here. Let's hit delete on that circle. So just showing you the options that we have if you can't find standard geometry and you keep on getting B-splines. The B-splines are because we've removed a pocket from here and we're no longer left with a standard arc geometry that describes that pocket. This is especially common when you have curved features like this. We've filleted this and we have this curvature, because if we come around this way, we can see when we pocket, we have different widths of pocketing that run down here. So this will be described as a B-spline if we pulled in the geometry. I'm just going to hide this sketch here, clicking on that sketch and pressing the space bar, and we're going to start adding the hole. Using the create a circle, I'm going to add a hole in here. Now I'm going to create this quite big to allow for this link to move freely in here. I'm going to hit escape, click on this circle and add some diameter. I'm going to set this one to 6mm, come over to task, and we'll come over, scroll up and hit close. We've got our sketch in here. We can now click on that sketch and use the pocket. And I'm going to go to first and hit OK. We've got our hole. Now let's create in here a shaft that will actually go through this hole to connect up. I'm going to click on this face inside and create a sketch. Let's use the section view. So now we're going to add the shaft that goes through the hole. We're going to use a circle and auto constrain to this center point, like so, and come out and create a circle. Now if we look at this without the section view, we can see what's starting to happen. When the shaft goes in here and we'll create the assembly, they should all link together. When I pad this, we'll be able to see this in the actual draft as well. So that draft clone, we'll be able to see that in there. That adds some dimensions. So we've got this circle here. Let's hit escape or hit the right mouse button, get the mouse pointer back, click on the circle, add a diameter. This diameter is 6, so we're going to go for something like 4 and hit OK. Let's come out and hit close. We've got this circle here. We've got the sketch selected. We need to pad and we need to come up to the first face. At the moment it's gone all the way through. So use the type, bring this down and click on to first. That means this is padded up to that first face there. If we hit OK, we've got our finished link. Now let's have a look to see what's happened with the clone. So we come down, we can see our clone is still here. If I press the space bar to make it visible, we can see what's starting to happen now. Let's click off. So we've got our clone, which was just the clone of that pocket. Now if we cloned the body, it would have taken the clone of all of this body. So we can use a clone at different stages, or we could just clone the body as a whole. Let's see if we can change that clone. Let's come down and have a look at that pocket, that cloned pocket, and use the data. If we come down, we can see the draft and the objects. We've got pocket 002. We can change this by clicking on that field, clicking on the button, hitting clear, and then we can select whatever we want from the list. I could select the body, or could select the last action, denoted by the little green arrow as the tip. So we can select that pad from here, or select the pad from the list, and hit OK. If I click off, everything recomputes, and you can see that our hole has now got the rod going through it there, and everything looks okay. We can now use this in assembly. I'm going to get rid of this pocket, this cloned pocket, and hit delete. So I don't need that now. I'm going to hit File and Save As, and create a new folder. And in here, I'm going to name this just as A2Plus demo. I'm going to save everything into this folder. Let's open up the folder and save this, say as something like link. Hit save. That's our first model created. So we're going to use repeats of this model in our assembly. So let's start with the assembly. So now we're going to create the assembly. I'm going to close that link and start a new document. And straight away I'm going to save it. So File, Save As, and we're inside that A2Plus demo. And I'm just going to call it something like A2Plus Assemble. So now we've got our document ready to go. Let's come over to the A2Plus Workbench. So the A2Plus Workbench is actually quite easy to use. It's much more simpler approach, and it requires less setting up. So if we look along the top here, we have a number of constraints, and these allow you to take, say, an edge, a face, etc., and connect those together. So we can import one model and connect parts of that model to another model, or something that we've created in another workbench within the same assembly. Let's first import our link. We can use the tool Add Shape from External File found on the toolbar, or we can come up to the A2Plus menu and come down to Add a Part from External File. Click on that and choose our link file that we just created. Double click it, and we've got our first model in our assembly. I've got nothing to attach this to. We'll click on that link 001 and come down. You can see that the first item that's imported has a fixed position of true. Now this is important when we come to such things as simulations. There's a very basic simulation system in here, and we're going to be showing that off in a moment. Let's import another link. Make sure nothing's selected. Come up to A2Plus and choose Add a Part from External File, or use the toolbar, and we'll click on that link file again. It's going to ask what to import. So we've got multiple bodies in here. We can actually select multiple bodies. We've only got one, so select that and import it. Now, as we move the mouse, the new model will come available, and we can drop it wherever we want. So let's just drop it into the spare space over here, quite close to this link. We can move this by using the Move a Selected Part tool, or we can just right click and transform and move that somewhere and hit OK. By clicking on it and using the Move a Selected Part, then we get the same transform option there. Let's hit OK. I'm going to now attach this part to this one. So we're going to chain them together. We want to use this shaft and this hole. Now the two things in common with this are the circle edges. So we take the circular edge from one here by selecting that edge, come over to the other one, hold down Control and select a corresponding edge. Now if I select this one, they will be lined up. So if I look to see where this one should fall, it should be really this top edge here. So this circle here, this top circle. Hold down Control, click that one. We've got the two circles selected. If we come up here, we can see all the constraints are now available. I'm going to use the Add Circular Edge constraint because we've added two circular edges. Click on that. They will be joined together, like so. You can see that we've got that edge buttoning up right close to the top here. Now if you come over to the left, we've got some offset here, so we can lower that down. And if we use the up and down arrows, it's in millimeters, so I'm going to actually type in 0.5 and we use minus 0.5. That places it in the center there. And we've got clearance from both sides. If this is around the wrong way, we can use the flip direction here as well. So we can flip it around. I'm happy with where that's positioned. And I hit accept. Now that's positioned. If I click on this one and look at this link body, we can see the fixed position is false. So we've connected this to a fixed object, this one, and this one is false. This allows for simulation. So if I try to move this now, it won't move. So I click on the move the selected part under constraints and try to move this, it's not going to move. We need another one in our chain. So let's add another one. Come up to the A2Plus, add a part from external file, and then click the link again and hit open. Move the mouse, our link appears, and we're going to go through the same process. Click to drop, come in, and we'll select the circle, that edge there, and the circle that it's going to connect to. So this one here, Control select. Now click on the circle constraint, and we need some offset. So we can see that's gone in there. That's set the offset to minus 0.5. So we've added that link in there. Accept that. Now when we move this link by using this tool here, the self-selected part under constraint, click, and you can see we have some movement in our model. So we can see how this is going to move when we actually print it. So when it's all connected together. And you can see that we can actually go into the body. So there is no physics involved in this. This is just solving the connection. So you couldn't use this for something like gear teeth or anything like that. It's just a basic solver. But it gives you an idea of how this will move under constraint. Let's just click to drop this, and we're back to where we started. Make sure we save. What I'm going to do now is export out this whole assembly. To do that, I'm going to control click all the links in here and use the file export, and I can export it out as an STL file, an object file, etc., a step file if I wanted to. I'm just going to go for the standard STL file and save this off. So what I've actually saved, I come to File, Import, and pick that STL file, hide the links by highlighting them all, pressing the spacebar, we can see we've got our model in there. And that is ready to print. All I'm going to do is just delete this before I print it and just show you some other things in here. So I'm going to just press the spacebar on these to bring them back. If we come into our tree and open these up, you'll see the constraints within. So we've got all these constraints here. And it also shows where they link to. So if I click one, come up to A2Plus, view, and highlight both constrained parts, click on that, we can see where those two are constrained. So you can see the link body there and link 001 here. It shows how those are constrained and where they're constrained. So we can see that green circles in there showing where we added the constraint. And this is really handy to figure out, if we get stuck, what parts are constrained to where. These other constraints I will go into in another tutorial. So this is just a basic tutorial of how to constrain these simple parts together and how to do a 3D print in place. Let's slice and print that STL and see the results. So I hope you enjoyed that video. I hope this 3D printing is actually bringing a new dimension to the channel and you're seeing this physical output and what you can actually do with FreeCAD to make these physical forms. I'll be doing more on the A2Plus Workbench in future videos so we can learn more about these constraints that live on this toolbar here. Hope to see you again soon, and I hope to see you in the next video. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the site. I also have a Ko-Fi or a Ko-Fi site that you can donate to if you so desire, and that's at ko-fi.com/MANG0. I also run a Patreon where you can subscribe and get extra content, and that's at www.patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Any money that's kindly donated will be used to expand the channel. Thanks a lot for watching and subscribing, and I'll see you again soon.